Excellencies, ministers, distinguished guests, fellow innovators, and the young leaders gathered in Luanda. Good morning from Vienna, and I'm so sorry that I'm not with you in person today. I have followed the story of Angola's digital journey over the years, and each year with ANGOTIC, the ambition grows. This year's theme, On the Path to Digital Transformation, feels like a declaration. Angola is not just on the path. Angola is helping build that path, and not just for itself, but for its neighbours as well. I want to spend a few minutes talking about the role that space plays in that journey. I know that space can feel distant, like science fiction, someone else's story, ambitions that aren't quite yet yours. I'd like to start by challenging that idea. Space is not a luxury. Space is now infrastructure, and no nation can fully achieve its digital future without it. I think we also need to be honest about what digital transformation really means and what it needs. It means a student in a rural province accessing the same quality of education as a student in the capital. It means a farmer receiving real-time weather and market data that lets her make better decisions. It means a clinic in a remote community consulting with a specialist hundreds of kilometers away. It means a government that can deliver services to its citizens wherever they live, not just where roads and cables happen to reach. That is the vision. And the gap between that vision and reality for hundreds of millions of people across this continent is not a gap in ambition. It is a gap in infrastructure. Nearly 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa still lack reliable internet access, not because connectivity is technically impossible to deliver, but because ground-based infrastructure has not reached them. And in many cases, it's not likely to either, because the economics of rolling out terrestrial connectivity doesn't make sense where people are dispersed across large land masses, especially if they are low-income families. This is where space changes the equation entirely. Satellites do not care about geography. They do not stop at the city's edge. They do not require a road or a tower to be built first. They reach the valley, the plateau, the coastal village, and the inland community with the same signal and the same economics, whether we connect one person in a rural village or 100 people in a city. The cost is the same. Today, satellites give us navigation, enabling precision agriculture, fleet logistics, and emergency response. They power weather forecasting systems that warn communities before disaster strikes. They bring broadband connectivity to schools, health clinics, and government offices that fiber and mobile communications have not reached. Earth observation from orbit helps us monitor climate change, track deforestation, manage water resources, and plan urban growth with actionable intelligence from space rather than guesswork. None of these things are sci-fi. They're happening now, in Angola, across Africa. The question is not whether space technology can serve your development agenda. It already does. The question is how much more intentionally, how much more ambitiously will we choose to use it? You cannot build a digital nation on a foundation that stops at the city's edge. Space allows that foundation to reach everywhere. I want to speak directly about what Angola has built, because it deserves to be acknowledged plainly and with pride. ANGOSAT-2 is a statement of sovereign ambition. Africa's only government-owned high-throughput satellite, operated by Angola, but with reach across the region. And Angola's leadership of the SADC shared satellite system signals a willingness to share that capacity, to think continentally, to lead not just for one country, but for a neighborhood of nations. The Conecta Angola project, bringing broadband connectivity to every corner of this country through space-based solutions, is precisely the kind of bold, integrated thinking that the development community talks about in theory, and Angola is actually doing in practice. This is what 21st century space leadership looks like. Services delivered, communities connected, governments empowered, and lives genuinely changed. I want to step away from policy language for a moment and speak about what this means for real people, because that is ultimately what all of this is for and why we are here. Think about a young woman in Cuando Cobango province. Brilliant, determined. She wants to study medicine. She wants to contribute to her community's health. But without reliable internet, without the digital tools to access online learning, without the connectivity that students in the capital take for granted, her path is harder than it needs to be. It's not her fault. It's because of the gap that we do have the power to close. Think about a smallhold farmer in Melania. He doesn't need lecture on digital agriculture. He needs a simple, affordable tool backed by satellite data and connectivity that tells him when rain is coming, what the soil needs, and what price his crop will fetch at the nearest market. Give him that, and he doesn't just feed his family better. He participates in an economy. He builds resilience. He joins a future. These are not hypothetical characters in a book. They are the reason that Angola launched a satellite. They are the reason that this forum matters. And they are the reason that when we talk about space and digital transformation, we must always bring the conversation back to the human being at the end of the signal. Every person we connect is not just a beneficiary of development, they are a contributor to it. The mandate of UNOOSA is clear: space for all humanity, not space for the few nations wealthy enough to build rockets and satellites, not space as the exclusive domain of the private sector. Space as a shared resource, governed with responsibility, accessible with equity, and used for the benefit of every person on this planet. In Africa, that commitment is active and growing. We work with African nations to build the regulatory frameworks that attract investment and protect national interests. We support the development of human capital, the scientists, engineers, and policymakers who will define Africa's space future. We facilitate access to satellite data for climate resilience, food security, and disaster management. We want Angola and every nation represented at ANGOTIC to not be just users of space, but to be architects of it. To be in the rooms where the rules are being written, to be at the table where the future of the space economy is being decided, not as observers, but as leaders. UNOOSA is your partner in making that happen. We mean that seriously. It is our commitment to you. I want to leave you with 3 things. First, treat connectivity infrastructure as foundational, not as optional. A hospital without connectivity runs at a fraction of its potential. A school without internet teaches children for a world they will encounter but not fully participate in. A government without a digital backbone cannot serve its people efficiently or transparently. Space-based connectivity is part of that foundation. Budget for it, plan for it, champion it. Second, invest in people with the same urgency that you invest in infrastructure. The satellite is only as powerful as the people who operate it, interpret its data, and build services around it. Angola has extraordinary talent, the whole continent does. Fund the universities and the training programs and the apprenticeships. The human capital gap is the real constraint, and it is also the most solvable one if we choose to prioritize it. Third, cooperate boldly and without hesitation. The digital economy does not respect borders. A satellite signal crosses a frontier in milliseconds. Data flows across an entire continent before we have finished a sentence. Our regulations, our partnerships, and our institutions must match that scale. Angola's shared satellite leadership under SADC is a model. Build more of those frameworks. UNOOSA wants to support you in doing exactly that. I began by saying that space can feel distant. I hope now that you see that it is in fact much closer and highly relevant. Because what we are really talking about, beneath the satellites and the frequencies and the data streams, is belonging. This right of every Angolan, every African, every human being to belong fully to the connected world, to access knowledge, to participate in its economy, to shape its future, is fundamental. That right does not depend on where you were born or how far you live from a city centre. It depends on whether we, governments, international organizations, the private sector, civil society, choose to build the systems that make it real. We must embed space by design into policy. Angola has already made that choice. ANGOTIC 2026 is evidence of it, and I believe genuinely and with great confidence that what is being built here, the conversations, the partnerships, the commitments, will be felt not just in Luanda, but across the continent and across the years to come. Again, I'm sorry I'm not there with you in person, but I am with you in purpose and in partnership. Keep building, keep connecting. The path is yours, and the stars are not as far as they seem. Thank you. Obrigada.